Okay, to start crocheting, you're going to start by making a slip knot. Always leave a little bit of a tail in case you need to sew something, or because you can always trim it and tuck it in later. So you're going to make a, move that, you're going to make a little loop with your yarn, and it's almost just a little bit like tying your shoes. You're just going to reach through the loop, grab the yarn, and pull it up. You don't want to pull out this end. You don't want to pull that through, or that's just going to make a knot. So then you can either just pull either of the ends, and that makes a knot. We call it a slip knot because if you pull on one of the ends, it tightens it or loosens it. So now what I'm going to do is take our crochet hook, put it over the hook, and then we can tighten the loop by pulling on the yarn. Okay. You don't want it too tight, but you also don't want it too loose. So you should see just a tiny little gap in there. Okay, just a tiny little gap. All right, so to basically crocheting is knots. You're just going to make a bunch of knots with your crochet hook and your yarn. And what you're going to want to make sure that you do is control the yarn. That's going to help you learn to crochet a little bit faster. So you're always going to want to make sure that you are holding on to the knot or your work in some way, but you also need to have access to the rest of the yarn. So most people find a way of holding it. If you're not going to hold it, basically to start with your foundation row, you're going to do a chain stitch. To do the chain stitch, you're just going to put the yarn over the hook, and then you're going to take the yarn that's on your slip knot and you're going to pull it over that loop, and you've just made your first chain stitch. Okay, so you'll find a way of holding your yarn. I loop mine around my finger, turn my hand over, and just kind of pull that around the back of my hand so that I have the yarn here, but I can still hold on to my work. Okay, so then what crocheting looks like is grabbing the yarn from front to back and pulling it through the loop. Do it again. Grab the yarn, pull it through the loop. Grab the yarn, pull it through the loop. That is called a chain stitch. You don't want to pull it really tight every time, or you're going to have stitches that are too tight that you can't work in, and you need to be able to work in those later. But you can count. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Each of these little V's makes a stitch. So I'm going to do about 10 or 15. Adjust as you need to. The reason I like to hold my yarn this way is it pulls it from the back, and I just kind of let my pinky go if I want to tighten it or loosen it. Okay, so I've got a small set of chains, and if you were following a pattern and you need to count them, you would just count each of the V's. All right. Now what we want to do is we want to make a single crochet. So single crochet is going to be a taller stitch that goes on the foundation row. Okay, and you're going to skip this first stitch that's next to your hook because it's got to give it room to move up and turn. So that's going to be kind of that post that turns when you crochet. So we're going to go into the second stitch, and you're going to put the hook into the middle of that second stitch, okay, and push it through. Okay, then you're going to, just like you did with the chain stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through. You're going to pull it through the stitch and then pull that up. So I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to grab again, yarn, that's called yarn over. Anytime you see it in a pattern, it's a YO or a yarn over, and pull it through both. And that is a single crochet. So it looks like I've got a big hole. That's going to go away as I keep moving down. It will adjust, and then you'll see what that stitch looks like. So to do the next one, this one's already taken. It's got a big hole and there's a stitch in there. So I'm going to go to the next one. Put your hook through. Okay. Again, it's important to hold the work so it doesn't get twisted. Yarn over. Pull it through the stitch. 2 loops. yarn over, pull it through both. Okay. So there's that big loop again, so go to the next one. Okay. Yarn over, pull it through the stitch. Got 2 loops. Yarn over, pull it through the 2 loops. So now I've got 3 stitches, and if you look at the top, you can see those V's again. 1, 2, 3. Those are the tops of my stitches. So I'll do a few more. One of the reasons you don't want it tight is because if you have tight stitches, you're going to have trouble getting your hook through the top of it. So always kind of pull them up a little bit, make sure you have that little gap, not too big of a gap, but at least a little bit of a gap. Get a little bit more yarn here. Okay, don't let it get twisted. Yarn should come up from the back. They're getting a little tighter as I go because I'm taking up a lot of space with all of this yarn. Almost to the end of the row, because we're going to do something a little bit different to start the next row, because this has been built on this foundation of chain. That's your first row, is always going to be a little bit different. Okay, and I actually have 2 I did 2 stitches in the same, see, so there's 1 stitch and 2 stitches. So I'm going to take that out, got my 1 stitch. Okay, my last stitch is actually right here, so the last stitch is always just a little bit tight. You might have to, encourage it to get on there a little bit. Okay, yarn over, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is 1 row of single crochet. If it looks a little uneven, that's okay. As you kind of work with it, everything kind of evens out. But you can see again, you can count the number of stitches. See those little V's? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 15 stitches. Okay. So to start the next row, I'm going to start by chaining 1, yarn over and just pull it through. Remember, that makes that little post to give it room as it goes. And then I'm going to turn my work. So this is the back and that's the front. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but usually the front is even shinier, and you can see the angle of the stitches kind of comes forward. This one looks a little bit different. Okay, so got my chain, I've turned, and now I'm going to look at the top. Okay, I'm going to again skip that chain, and I'm going to work in this one, but I'm not going to do this like I did with the last one. I'm going to go underneath the stitch, and I'm going to go underneath the entire V. All right, see how I do that? So then I'm going to yarn over, pull through the stitch, and again I've got 2 on my hook. Yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, go through the next hole underneath the V stitch. Make sure you go under both parts of the V. Yarn over and pull it through. Yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, and you just do that all the way across. Yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2. And I do that all 15 ways, and then from that point on, every time I start a new row, I start the same way that I did this row. You chain 1 and then go under your stitches. Okay, so that's the single crochet. All right, and now you can go practice.